Relax, it was just an old car. My brother shrugged, tossing the keys to a stranger in our driveway. I stared at the empty garage. You had no say anyway, he said. Then the buyer mentioned the title. My name is Lindsay Carter, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a dental hygienist in a small clinic, the kind of steady job that pays the bills without drama or excitement. After our father passed away 6 months ago, I stayed in the family home to manage bills and maintain the property nobody else seemed to care about. My brother Darren was always the one our family praised, the confident one with a loud voice who dominated every room he entered. Family members naturally assumed he should handle important decisions, even when I was the one doing most of the actual work. I maintained everything Dad left behind, including his cherished vintage Mustang stored carefully in the garage. That car held deep memories for me, weekend drives and quiet talks with our father when life felt overwhelming. Darren rarely visited the house, but still spoke as if everything inside it belonged exclusively to him. I often stayed silent during family gatherings to avoid conflict, believing peace was more important than being right. I wasn't rich or glamorous like some of my cousins. I didn't have Darren's charisma or his ability to convince people he knew best. But I had something they didn't expect. I had careful attention to detail and records that told the truth. If you've been pushed aside in family decisions, you probably know how frustrating that feels. Quiet people are often underestimated by relatives who mistake silence for weakness. Subscribe if you've ever had your voice completely ignored by family members who thought they knew better. Has anyone here seen family property taken without respect or permission? Click like or hit hype because this story is just getting started. I returned home from work on a Tuesday afternoon to see a stranger inspecting our garage with a flashlight, peering at the vintage Mustang Dad had restored over years. Darren stood beside him proudly, arms crossed, acting like he owned the place. He announced casually that he'd already sold Dad's Mustang to this buyer for cash. I felt my chest tighten as I tried to process what I was hearing. I protested immediately, saying the car was never discussed between us and certainly never agreed upon for sale. Darren dismissed me with a wave of his hand. You just live here, Lindsay. I handled the real stuff, the estate, the decisions that actually matter. The buyer shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing tension he hadn't expected. He asked carefully if both heirs had approved the sale, looking between us with growing concern. Darren quickly insisted he had full legal authority over their father's property, that I was just staying in the house temporarily. I noticed Darren holding paperwork I had never seen before, documents that looked official but somehow wrong. The buyer hesitated, his confidence fading, as he asked about the official title transfer and whether it had been processed correctly. Darren tried to rush the deal, telling me to go inside and stay out of business I didn't understand. But then the buyer mentioned almost casually that he always verified title history before completing any vintage car purchase, making sure everything was legitimate. Darren's confident expression flickered for just a second, and I saw something I'd never seen before. He looked genuinely nervous. The betrayals came in waves after that confrontation in the driveway. First was financial exclusion that happened without any warning or discussion. Darren emptied our father's small savings account at the local bank without informing me at all, claiming later that he deserved it for handling the estate responsibilities. He told relatives at a Sunday dinner that I should be grateful I still had a place to live, framing his theft as generosity. Second came public humiliation designed to undermine any objections I might raise. At a family barbecue, Darren made jokes in front of everyone about how I was too timid to deal with legal matters, too simple to understand complicated estate issues. He called himself the responsible sibling who fixed problems while I just existed in the background. Relatives laughed along, assuming he was telling the truth about everything. Third was direct manipulation, aimed at getting me to sign away any remaining rights. Darren pressured me repeatedly to sign a document giving him full authority over all remaining assets, everything Dad had left behind. He said refusing would delay estate paperwork unnecessarily and make me look selfish to the rest of the family. I began questioning everything about how he'd been handling things, wondering what else he'd done without telling me. My frustration grew with each passing day, but I made a conscious decision to stop arguing openly with him. Instead, I started quietly investigating, checking records and asking careful questions. I stopped defending myself and started gathering evidence. What Darren and the rest of my family didn't know was that our father had insisted I learn basic paperwork and record keeping years ago. Dad had taught me to keep copies of important documents, to never rely on memory alone. I kept copies of vehicle registrations and insurance documents in a locked file cabinet in my bedroom, organized and accessible. What they didn't know was Dad had trusted me with the details that really mattered. I pulled out the Mustang's registration paperwork one evening and discovered something crucial. The title still listed both siblings as legal heirs, requiring dual consent for any sale or transfer. Darren couldn't legally sell that car without my signature. I started collecting everything I could find. Emails Darren had sent to potential buyers, sale listings he'd posted online advertising Dad's car, bank withdrawal records showing where the savings money had gone. I quietly ordered an official title search report through a service I found online, wanting to verify the ownership history in writing. Everything I gathered pointed to the same conclusion. Darren had been lying about his authority. I organized it all into a folder and waited for the right moment. I had a plan they never saw coming. My childhood friend Rachel, someone I'd known since elementary school, worked at the vehicle registration office downtown. I called her one evening and explained what Darren was trying to do with the Mustang. Rachel listened carefully and then explained how fraudulent title transfers get flagged during official searches, how the system is designed to catch exactly this kind of deception. She helped me understand the legal steps required to challenge a sale and protect my rights as a co-heir. Meanwhile, Darren became increasingly arrogant as days passed. He bragged to relatives that he would sell more of our father's assets soon, that he had plans to liquidate everything and split the money however he saw fit. He even told our aunt that I had agreed to everything, that I'd signed off on his decisions. I stayed completely calm through all of it, letting him continue talking and digging himself deeper into lies. Rachel encouraged me to gather absolutely all proof before confronting him directly to make sure the evidence was undeniable. Then Darren announced he was organizing a family dinner at the house to celebrate closing the Mustang deal, inviting relatives and even the buyer to mark the occasion. The tension built as I prepared my evidence folder for that exact night, knowing this would be the moment everything came out. The dinner was held in our living room on a Saturday evening, the air thick with the smell of takeout Chinese food and the sound of relatives chatting casually. Darren stood near the fireplace holding a beer, looking relaxed and victorious. He proudly told everyone gathered that the car was officially sold and the money was already handled, already deposited safely. I sat quietly on the couch, waiting. Then I calmly asked the buyer, who had come to the dinner as Darren's guest, if he'd completed the title verification yet. The room got quieter. The buyer set down his plate and explained that the title search had actually flagged 2 legal heirs on the vehicle and showed no authorized transfer had been filed. Darren tried to interrupt immediately, claiming it was just a paperwork delay, something he'd clear up next week. But I was already pulling out my folder. I presented printed records to the buyer and to the family members sitting nearby, showing clearly that the car could not legally be sold without my signature as co-heir. I also revealed Darren's attempt to forge authorization forms, documents I'd found in his truck. Darren's face went red. "You're embarrassing me in front of everyone," he said, his voice shaking with anger. I looked at him calmly and said, "You embarrassed yourself when you tried to sell something you didn't own." Rachel, who I'd invited to the dinner, explained the legal consequences of fraudulent vehicle sales, how it could involve criminal charges if the sale had gone through. Family members who had been laughing at Darren's jokes earlier suddenly went silent, realizing he had lied about the entire deal. Darren's confidence collapsed completely as relatives began confronting him with questions he couldn't answer. The buyer apologized to me and canceled the purchase immediately, saying he wanted nothing to do with the disputed title. The car sale was permanently canceled and the title remained legally protected under both our names. Darren faced serious consequences for attempting fraud, including losing the trust of family members who had always supported him. Relatives who had automatically sided with him before began questioning his other decisions about the estate. I finally asserted my equal role in handling everything properly, making it clear I wouldn't be pushed aside anymore. I restored the garage, cleaning it carefully and making sure the Mustang was protected the way Dad would have wanted. I decided to keep the car as a permanent memory of my father, something I could maintain and eventually pass down. For the first time in my life, family members actually listened when I spoke at gatherings, asking my opinion instead of assuming Darren knew best. The final thought I kept returning to was simple but powerful. They had always thought I was the quiet one who stayed out of the way, too timid to challenge anything. Turns out, I was the only one who had been paying attention to what really mattered. Have you had relatives take advantage of family assets or inheritance after someone passed away? Maybe a dishonest sibling tried to claim things that weren't theirs alone. Share your similar experiences in the comments, because your story might help someone else going through the same thing right now. Subscribe to join a community that supports standing up for yourself when family tries to take advantage. Tell your story below. Click hype to help this story reach others who desperately need it. Did this story hit home for you? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Click hype to help this story find others who felt the same way. Your support makes a huge difference.